Welcome to Two-Way Cops, Cops Supporting Gun Rights. In this episode, this is a message to the police officers that follow us. Now, this message isn't for the general public, but you guys are welcome to listen and hear everything we have to talk about as we talk about disobeying unlawful orders. Now, I never thought that I'd ever have to ever make a video about this, but the times that we're in have shown that we need to have a talk about it. So our politicians love pitting the police against the public, and our officers are going to be put in awkward positions. Now, again, this is for our law enforcement officers that follow us. Now, if you are a regular person watching this, our officers need your support. Go ahead and follow and watch this. But the best thing that you can do is show support for them so that they can keep their job while maintaining the Constitution. So for our active cops, this is for you. Now, where does this come from? Where does my information come from? Because I was asked to violate the First Amendment. I'm speaking from experience. Now, several years ago, we had a group come into our city and exercise their free speech. They said awful things, and the community would call 911, asking us to make them stop, making those people stop speaking. We didn't. In fact, we educated callers about the First Amendment, and then we left. Now, the city was under a lot of pressure and passed a city ordinance, a misdemeanor, that said you can only practice free speech in groups of 3 or more if you were at a specific park between 4 and 6 p.m. on Wednesdays. Seriously, I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. Now, they brought it up in a staff meeting, which is all of our supervisors, and told us to start citing people in this group when they came into the city. Now, I'm glad this happened in an open meeting with minutes being taken, because I explained the Constitution and that we wouldn't be partaking in this, and that my officers that worked for me wouldn't be partaking in it either. Well, then came the unlawful order to enforce it. So like all good cops, we ignored the order until the call came in. On the radio, I told dispatch that we're canceling all units and then we're not going to respond to that call. Now, a captain who was under pressure from the city decided to violate the Constitution, and he went in our place. Now, the rest of that call can be seen in a lawsuit that we lost. Now, I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I survived the fallout, but you need to be prepared for when that happens to you. The biggest thing you want to do is to know the Constitution and, most importantly, case law. Now, many people are going to claim a constitutional violation when they're arrested. I've heard people say some crazy things, including some politicians. Now, however, many people don't actually read the Constitution. Now, for a cop, read it, know it, and before you say you aren't going to enforce the law, just make sure you've read everything first. Now, in the academy, we get constitutional law classes, but that's a summation of what we need to know. It's better for you to read the entire thing. You should also be a master of case law. Now, freedom of speech is a cornerstone of the Constitution, but there are limitations on the First Amendment that were decided by the United States Supreme Court. It's important to know those limitations. And it's not just the First Amendment, there's limitations on the Fourth Amendment as well. So whether you like it or not, those case decisions were decided by the Supreme Court, which is part of the balance of powers. We need to know this front and back so that we can refuse unlawful orders. So in my own example, the city attorney tried to say that the restriction on the First Amendment was lawful. I asked him for specific case law, and he stated an obscure case decision out of Washington dealing with private property. Now, obviously, this didn't apply, and we quickly countered his assertion. Simply put, know the law and be prepared to educate others, whether it's your bosses or the public. Walking away is a last case scenario. Now, a lot of citizens will come up to cops and just say, or they'll say it in the comments down below, just walk away and quit when you're given an unlawful order. Now, this is misguided to say the least. If every cop quit every time they were asked to do something by a superior or a politician that goes against the Constitution or against case law, we'd have no cops. Besides, who's going to take our place? A person that's going to violate the Constitution? The rhetoric, it doesn't help. Okay, so in my case, had I simply quit, my family would be in trouble financially, and a moron that would have violated the First Amendment would have taken my place. Both are unacceptable. So sure, if you work in an agency that routinely violates the Constitution, and we know which ones those are, you may have to quit and move on to another agency before you wind up in prison too. But you're going to be your last resort. It's better to fix from within and to promote from within and stop what's occurring. Now, another way to avoid unlawful orders is pretend policing. Now, some officers do pretend policing, when they're given unlawful orders. So an example would be a law being passed that says you must seize all assault weapons. So we had an assault weapons law where I worked, and I ran across regular citizens with assault weapons, and I just pretended like they weren't there. No big deal. I can always say that I didn't see them, and they can't prove that I did. This is basically pretend policing. So my only caveat here is that you need to be careful that you don't get in trouble for lying. So if you get in trouble for lying, you'll end up on the Brady list and you're going to lose your job. So be smart when disobeying unlawful orders and just make sure you're covering yourself. Another thing is to document everything. Document, document, document. My agency did come after me at one point. I was saved because I documented everything my chief and administration did when they said stupid things. So they kept me busy with the amount of nonsense that came out of their mouths. When my agency wanted me to cite people for violating the First Amendment, I made sure that I documented who was in that meeting and who said what. I also kept a copy of the meeting minutes. So other times, my chief would make comments that violated our policy on discrimination in the workplace. One time, they even forged an evaluation saying I wrote it when in fact they altered what I wrote to be the opposite of what I had documented. I kept all copies, documented who was present for what conversations, and kept a log on my conversations. It's very tedious, but there's nothing more glorious than breaking all this information out when you're standing in front of the man and owning everybody in the room. FOP, or the Fraternal Order of Police, LDF, Legal Defense Fund, is an absolute must. When the man comes after you for standing by the Constitution, they're going to try and fire you or suspend you. Having LDF is going to help you 100%. I definitely took out more from LDF than I ever put in. One bad chief hired an outside consultant at one point to come after me at the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. My defense was costly, but I won because I did everything we just talked about. Supervisors, you're the first line of defense. I was a supervisor. I know what kind of pressure our sergeants and our lieutenants are under. I get it. But you chose to get that job, and it's your duty to protect your cops. When the unconstitutional orders come down, protect them and start the fight now. Don't be a lemming and just repeat an unlawful order. For our citizens, thanks for watching all the way through. For the citizens that read this, don't be an ass by saying things like, just remember your oath. Okay, you think they forgot? These guys are out there every day protecting you, and hearing that is the absolute worst kind of statement you can make. Say something like, thanks for having my back. I've got yours. That goes farther than anyone can fathom. Don't watch the news as they show some rogue cop that doesn't represent the other 900,000 cops that are in the United States. That's like me going to your work and picking out the biggest idiot you have and say he represents everybody at your workplace. So help these guys out. They're under a tremendous amount of stress right now. All right, my final thoughts. Keep your head up. The average American loves you and knows how hard you're working. Know that liberal leaders are going to beat the crap out of you for the next couple of years. So as we teeter on a civil war, be sure to keep up on your case law and communicate with your bosses about supporting the Constitution. Communication, friendships, and support is what's going to get you through this.